Well, hello everybody. My name is Lindsay and I am so excited to share with you all these delicious recipes. You will not be sorry for trying them. Oh my gosh, so good. Just come along with me as I make them and we can just drool together. I'm already drooling, so just come along, drool with me. So freaking good. I hope you enjoyed this video. Is it yummy, Dan?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes, you do.
I'm not sure what to call this meal, but it's just like pasta and meat and delicious, and so let's try it, you know? Let's get into this. All right, so here is one of the easiest meals ever, and we're just gonna start with some bow tie pasta, a can of pasta sauce. I decided to do Classico because I heard someone that was like, do Classico, it's delicious. And then I have some onions. I grabbed both of them. They're pretty small onions, so I'm gonna cut both of them up. And then I have a probably 2/3, like half to 2/3 pound of ground beef right here, and then a 1/3 pound of sausage that I'm gonna brown up. And then I thought it would be kind of fun to just add a little bit of tomato to it. I like tomatoes, so I'm gonna add that. And then, yeah, so let's start this. I forgot to mention that we are putting cottage cheese in this as well. I had just forgotten to take it out of the fridge because I took everything out earlier. So, yeah. So we're also putting cottage cheese in it. You'll see, it will be delicious. I'm excited. I also have some asparagus that I want to use, that I need to use because it's gonna go bad if I don't. So let's use that. I'm probably just going to boil them for like a minute or two and then put them in the oven. I'll chop them up into bite-sized pieces. All right, so let's start just by putting this bow tie pasta in the pot to boil, and I do add a little bit of salt just to give the pasta a little bit of flavor. I always add salt to my water. It just gives it so much extra flavor. And then I needed to defrost the meats in the microwave. While I did that, I was cutting up the asparagus and just throwing it into my colander just to rinse it, and then I started to chop all of my onions. Oh, I hate cutting onions. It's one of my least favorite things, but I love the taste of onion, so I just kind of deal with it, I guess. And so, yeah, it's constantly chopping onions. But I learned a pretty good way to chop onions, and it's just to chop all the way around and then to start cutting off pieces. I don't know. I think I show you again when I make the next meal as well. And then I'm just boiling the asparagus for a couple minutes just to soften them before I put them in the oven. And this just made them cook so much quicker. I don't know, it was worth it. I tried it. It was delicious too. So if you want to try it, it's worth it. And then I just use the same pot to start my meat to cook them in. I didn't even rinse the bowl out. Not the bowl, the pot. I didn't even rinse the pot out because I was just like, it's fine. So now I'm just browning my ground beef and my sausage that I defrosted, and I mean it's pretty straightforward. It doesn't take very long. Yeah, and so that's just what I'm doing here. And then I took my asparagus that I boiled, and you can see that it's just steaming, and I put it on a pan and I let that kind of sit for a minute while I added the onions to my meat dish, and I just let those kind of sit for a minute in the meat. And then I do take a paper towel and like get the grease out of this, and it just does help soak up a lot of that grease that you don't necessarily want in your pasta dish. But I do that in just a second. But to the asparagus, I added some olive oil and then some salt and pepper and some garlic powder. And then I also added some Parmesan. And then I just mixed it up with my hands and then tossed it in the oven. And I don't know if I broiled it or just baked it. Either way would work because it's already cooked. So whichever one you need to do. And then I just let this kind of simmer for a minute, and then I added the paper towel. As you see, it just soaks it up. It just makes it a lot easier for cleanup. You don't have to drain anything. And if you don't have a ton of oil or grease, then this is a really good way of doing that. But as you can see, the onions are beginning to cook, which is awesome. And then I added my can of diced tomatoes. These are petite diced tomatoes. I like them the best just because they're not huge, and Devin doesn't like pick them out if I do petite ones. It's much better for him. And then I'm just making sure that these aren't sticking all together. The bow tie pasta, if you don't stir your pasta, it does stick together. And then I'm just adding the whole entire can of pasta sauce to it, stirring it in, letting it kind of simmer for a minute before I add the pasta, which is what I'm going to do right now. I'm not sure how long I let it simmer, just until the onions were cooked. And then I drained the pasta and then added it straight to my pasta sauce, I should say, and just mixed it all up and just, and then in a second, I'm about to add the cottage cheese. It's a cup of cottage cheese. Yeah, it was so good, guys. Like, super delicious. Oh, and it lasted for like 2, maybe 3 meals. I think we ate it for lunch the next day, and then we had it for like dinner another night. I don't remember, maybe 2 lunches. It was about 3 meals though, and it was so stinking good. Oh my gosh. Guys, this is so good. Oh my gosh. And so easy. I'd never tried the Classico brand of pasta sauce, so I wanted to try it, and I think it's really good. So if you don't want to make your own, like I usually get like the Hunt's traditional stuff and then add my flavoring into it so that it's a better flavor profile. I add a lot of stuff to it, but it makes it so good. This is a good second choice, not gonna lie. It's a little bit pricier thing, but then you don't have to add a bunch of flavors to make it good. So, and that's the finished product. It's super good. I would recommend making this. It's so easy. It was really, really quick, and the asparagus was delicious too. I think I did add a little bit too much pepper and garlic, so I might say just kind of tone that back a little bit, but it was really, really, really good. And then you just top it with Parmesan, and it's super good. Buckle up, guys, because this is probably the best soup I have ever made, / eaten, / I want it right now, / why is it not in my mouth, / give it to me. So for this next meal, we're not gonna have a remote or a fork, just so you know. That's not in the meal. Just have it cleaned off my counter. So I have some potatoes. We are going to be making loaded baked potato soup. Very easy. It's a recipe I found, so hopefully it's really good, but you need 6 cups of chicken broth, some bacon, 6 cups of potatoes. I'm not sure how much this is gonna be, so I might have to put one back or grab one from the fridge if there's not enough. I'm adding some onion and carrots just because I always like to add onion and carrots. It makes everything taste better, I think. And then some seasoned salt, cream cheese, salt and pepper, and then I'm gonna add a little bit of garlic powder and onion powder just because that's what I like. But actually the recipe does call for just these things if you're really interested. These are the things I'm adding. So let's get into this because I'm excited. If you are a fan of fresh baked bread and you're a fan of Rhodes rolls, you should try these Rhodes white bread. And they're in the frozen section. They're so good. You take one out and you let it sit out all day until it it rises to about 1 inch above the pan, and then you put it in the oven, and it's just so stinking good. So if you want to try these, I would recommend them. They're awesome, and you don't have to make your own bread, which is just so much work. So I started by cutting all my vegetables, just cutting up the carrots, and yeah, obviously I take the skins off the carrots first, and then I start to chop them up. And whenever I cut vegetables, my dog is just always right there, and she loves carrots, so I gave her a little piece of carrot. She takes it with her into the living room and just starts to chew on it. She really does enjoy them, so it's a good little snack for her, I think. Then after I cut my carrots, I cut all of my potatoes, and I don't think I quite had 6 cups of potatoes, but I wasn't that worried about it. I think there was like probably about 5 cups. I was able to fill up that 4-cup thing just like overflowing the measuring cup that I have right there. And I was actually hanging out with a friend while I was cutting up my carrots, so I was just kind of like chilling and cutting up all of these carrots and potatoes and everything. So I had already defrosted my bacon, so I just kind of threw it onto my little pan and laid it out so that I could bake it. If I bake it, it just takes less time, it makes less of a mess, it just is so much easier. So I just bake it at 350 for like 15 minutes. And then here is my way of cutting an onion. I think I got a better shot going downward than I did the last onions I cut. So I peel off the outer shell of the onion, and sometimes I peel off the whole outer shell, just depending on how the onion is. Like if it's really questionable onion, I really get in there really deep. But then after I do that, I keep the onion ball together basically, and I just go around the root and I chop downward so that it's like sliced all the way through, but only half of the onion. And then I do that the whole way. And then I get to the end, and once I have it chopped all the way around, then I turn it to the side and I just cut little pieces, cut little slices, and it's perfect. It takes little to no time, and I hate cutting onions, so anything that makes it quicker, this is awesome, makes me happy. So in my pot, I decided to use some bacon grease that I had kept in my fridge. I just warmed it up in the microwave and then threw it into my pot. And then I just threw my onions in there. And for the bacon grease, you could just use like butter or any other kind of oil. But then I just threw all my vegetables in there and stirred it up and let it kind of simmer for a minute. And I could tell that it was starting to stick to the bottom of the pan, so I added a little bit of the chicken broth and then I stirred it up, and then I added the rest of the chicken broth just to start the cooking process, just to get all these vegetables cooked. But I did want to kind of saute the vegetables a little bit. I didn't do it very much. They didn't really saute at all. So it was fine, but it was all right. And then I just added some of this Lowry's. I don't know. I'm not the measurer. I don't measure things. I just kind of threw some in my hand and threw it in there, and I'm like, that looks good. So then I was like, great. I think I did add a little bit more of that later on. And then I also added some salt, not salt, I added some pepper and garlic powder and onion powder. Just to give it some more flavor, and I really enjoy those seasonings. I feel like they really add a lot. Even if you have onion in your dish, I feel like adding onion powder just adds like that extra amount of onion that is necessary because onion is delicious. And I am a strong believer of just adding things until you think it tastes good. Taste your food, make sure it tastes delicious. Make sure that it has a good flavor before you move on to the next step, unless like the next step is the flavor. But I feel like adding flavor is the most important thing, and making sure that it has enough is really important. You don't want your food to be bland, so taste your food. Then I chopped up all the bacon just using scissors. It just makes it go a lot quicker, so I did that really quick. Tried not to eat all the bacon, and then I threw in the block of cream cheese. This is what made it freaking delicious. This is so good. I'm drooling just looking at this. Just so you know, in case you're wondering, added the bacon. Guys, everything about this. If you don't like bacon, I don't know if we can be friends, because bacon is delicious. I want it right now. And so I just mixed the bacon in there, and it's just, guys, it did thicken up, like the soup thickened up a lot. So if it does thicken up too much, you can add milk or some kind of liquid just to thin it out a little bit. Also, the bread turned out perfect. and I wanted to eat the whole thing, but I refrained. I tried not to. Devin wasn't home for dinner at the beginning. He came home like an hour after me and Dan ate, and then he came and ate it, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, this is so good." And I was like, "I know, it's so good." And yeah, so I topped the bread with butter just to, that's what I've always done with rolls and bread and everything. We've just always like taken some butter and thrown it on the top. It just gives it a little extra flavor on top. I don't know, it's just good. And then I cut the bread with my bread knife, and I don't know why I cut that slice so thin. I think I did just end up eating that slice. And then here is the soup. Oh my gosh, so delicious, so good. And then we just ate it with the bread. Me and Dan used some blackberry jam on there, homemade blackberry jam that Devin's aunt gave us. And yeah, so freaking good. Try this soup, please. Is it yummy, Dan?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes, you do.
Yes it do.
I'm done.
That's so yummy in your belly. Good.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Say bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So I was covering the camera microphone when I was filming this, but we are making some beef with broccoli. So we're gonna do some beef. You just need like a pound of beef, and I'm using stew meat, and then I'm gonna slice it up real thin. And then I have broccoli florets. I'm just gonna use a pound of this. This is a 2-pound package. I'm gonna use some rice, some oil, some seasonings, truly like onion powder, garlic powder, ginger, ground ginger, salt, pepper, not salt. I have some beef bouillon cubes, which I think was a great addition to this dish. Some soy sauce and cornstarch, I believe, is what you will need. Yeah, that cornstarch, and then a drink of water next to that, because you can never have enough water in your life. So to start, I wanted to cook my rice just so it was done when the rest of the food was done. And I do a 1-to-1 ratio in my Instant Pot. I always spray my Instant Pot with cooking spray, and then I do, like if I do 1 cup of rice, then I'll do 1 cup of water, but I was doing 2 cups of rice. So then I take my rice and I take it to my sink, and I rinse it, but you're supposed to like rinse it until the water runs clear. I don't ever do that. Anyway, so I just put my water and my rice into my Instant Pot, 2 cups of each, and then I threw some salt in there, and then I just let that cook. And then I took my beef and I started to defrost it. I realized that the recipe does tell me that it should be slightly frozen when you cut it, but it was fine. It worked out just fine. I just cut these into smaller bite-sized, I mean, they're already bite-sized pieces, but I cut them into more like thin strips, just so it's more like when you go to like a restaurant and it's like the beef with broccoli is sliced really thinly, and so I just sliced it really thin. So I took a 1/4 cup of water and half of one of these cubes of bouillon. The cubes were really big, so like one of half of the cube was like 1 normal cube of bouillon. So I just threw that in there, and then I tossed the measuring cup into the microwave. After I tried to stir it up, but it wasn't doing much. So then I tossed it into the microwave and let that stir up really well, let it mix. And then I just started adding my ingredients for my sauce. Some onion powder, some garlic, some ginger, I think it was 3 tablespoons of brown sugar, soy sauce. I just kind of kept adding things, some oil, until it tasted good. Guys, honestly, that's really my staple. I just like to add things. I added some pepper. I just like to add things until it just has a good flavor. So once my sauce was ready, I took half of my bag of broccoli and threw it in a microwave safe bowl and just tossed it in my microwave. Let that cook up because I wanted the broccoli to already be cooked before I added it to the meat. So Then in my pot, I just added some oil and then I threw my meat in there to start browning and sauteing and just making it taste delicious. And just browning up the meat so that it's ready for the sauce. And it does take a minute. You have to be patient. But then once it was ready, I just threw the sauce in there and let that kind of simmer for a minute. Let it kind of soak in the flavors of the sauce. Oh my gosh, the sauce was so good. I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. I have tried beef with broccoli before, but I think I did something wrong. I think I was like, they told me to add like orange juice or something to it, and it was terrible. So I would not recommend doing that. So I realized I didn't actually add the cornstarch to the sauce, so I just grabbed a little bit of water and threw the cornstarch in the water to dissolve it, and then I just threw it right in there with the meat and everything. It was fine. It turned out great, honestly. I think it helped that I did add extra liquid, like I added a little extra water with the bouillon, and then I added a little extra water with the cornstarch, and I just think that that helped. I think I did end up adding more cornstarch to it later though, but here I am just tasting it to make sure it has a good flavor. The meat was all the way cooked, so I didn't have to worry about that. But then I just threw in the cooked broccoli, and it was already cooked, so I didn't have to worry about it not being like ready. And I think that helped a lot because I have made stir fry before. I've made like beef bulgogi and it's really good, but usually I'll overcook the meat because the veggies aren't cooked and I have to wait for them to cook too. So it just worked out well because it was just frozen veggies that I tossed in the microwave and they were already done. So it was great. So here we are, the finished product, super good. Just top it onto some rice. And there you go. You've got a decent, delicious, amazing meal. So try it if you want. It's so good. All right, guys, if you're ready, this is one of my favorite recipes ever. This is my mother's famous meatloaf. I don't know where the recipe came from, someone. But this is the one my mom would make always. And the meatloaf portion, these are just some rolls that I've been rising all day and didn't start dinner until after they were already risen, so those are going in the oven once it's preheated. And then this is for the sauce, but this is all you need for the actual meatloaf. It's very simple. 2 pounds of ground beef. This is like probably about 2.5 pounds, but I just thought I'd, 2.5 pounds sounds great. And then you'll need a cup of milk, a large onion. So I have these 2 probably somewhat questionable onions from the fridge, but I will cut them and use them, and great. And then 2 eggs, 2 large eggs. I think it's a cup of plain breadcrumbs. I will make sure I put the right amount in. And then you need 8 ounces of cheese. Usually I have a cheese block and I cut it, and I do like cheese cubes and then I put it through. But I have this sliced cheese from my freezer and some extra shredded cheese if I feel like it needs more, which I think it will, then more than that. So yes, this is delicious. It's amazing. You will not regret making this if you decide to make it. But let's get into the rest. Oh, and the sauce is just brown sugar and ketchup. It is a very good combination. First things first, you gotta take the meat and defrost it in the microwave, and then I threw my rolls into my oven, and then here I am just chopping up my onions, throwing my meat into this bowl, and I just take my tongs and kind of just separate it a little bit. It was still a little bit frozen, but not very much. Added my cup of milk, and then my cup of breadcrumbs, and then tiny little bit extra just because there was 2.5 pounds, and then my onions, just throwing those in there, my 2 eggs. Really, this meal is just so stinking easy, so I just threw my eggs in there, and then after that I kind of used my tongs to kind of mix it up a little bit, but I just kind of got sick of that, so I just threw my hand in there, just threw it in there, mix it up. And then I take my 9x13 pan. If you have a bigger pan, it might work better. It almost was too big. And then You lay it flat in the pan, and then you have enough room to put your cheese in the center. As you can see, that's what I'm doing here. And I just throw my cheese in there. So I did end up using all the cheese that I had, which was probably about like 1 pound of cheese, which is a lot, but also delicious. So I'm not gonna be sad about that. And so I just layered it in there, and then I threw all of the shredded cheese on top of that. Just as like, well, just might as well use it all. It's here. Just throw it all in there. And then after that, I just take each side and I roll it up until it like meets the center. And then I just do that on both sides so that it becomes like this loaf, which I mean, it is a meatloaf, so it makes sense. And truly, this is just so good. And the cheese just adds so much deliciousness and depth. And I don't know, guys, it's so simple and yet so tasty. So I just bake that meatloaf in the oven for an hour at 350, and I had taken my rolls out and they were perfect. And I just let those sit to the side for a little bit while I cooked everything else and made the sauce and everything. And so the sauce is 1 cup of ketchup to 1 cup of brown sugar, and I just have dark brown sugar, which is fine. I don't care. I just get whatever is the cheapest. And dark brown sugar was the cheapest. And then I just microwave it until it's incorporated and it becomes like a barbecue-ish type sauce. So then I take the meatloaf out of the oven, and I do take all of the like grease out. You don't have to. You can let it sit there. It's fine. I just like to, just because it's, I don't know, I like to get that out of there. And then I just top it with the sauce, and you can leave a little bit in your container for topping it when it's cooked, because I like to add a little extra on my plate onto my meatloaf just to add a little extra sweetness. Also, after you put the sauce on it, you put it back into the oven just for like 10 to 15 minutes just to make the sauce kind of like bubble a little bit. Yeah, it's not too much, just a little bit. And then I just grabbed a bowl and some butter and threw some of these vegetables in the microwave, and just, you know, that's a great easy side. I love frozen veggies on the side, just with a little butter and salt and pepper. Just, you know, I think they're good. I don't know, Devin isn't a big fan of like frozen veggies that are cooked in the microwave, but I think they are a perfect side. So here it is in all its glory. Oh my gosh, guys. One of my favorite recipes ever. I always asked for this on my birthday. It was just one of those things that I absolutely love, and I will never stop making this recipe. It is a little decadent. It is a little unhealthy, but you can't go wrong with something so delicious. This is just one of the most simple meals ever. You can't go wrong with just a protein and some sides, and I made my own sauce for my fries, and I'm just, yeah, I love this meal. So easy, so delicious. Let's get into it. But I just spray the crap out of my Instant Pot. And then I have these chicken legs. I'm not even gonna defrost these. I'm just gonna toss them right in. And depending on like the size of your family, it's just me, Devin, and Dan, so we don't need a lot of protein. So 4 of them will give us a whole meal, at least the protein for that meal. And then I obviously do other things, but like if there was 3 adults, you might need 6 of these or whatever. But like I eat 1 or 2, and then Devin eats 2 or 3 depending. So it's like perfect for us. But then I just smother the crap out of them with barbecue sauce. So this is about a 1/4 cup of water. I don't know if I'll put the whole thing in there, but I'm just gonna put a little bit in there just to make sure it doesn't burn. I actually haven't ever done that. You probably don't need to, but I guess you can. I just did, so can't hurt, right? And then I'm just gonna do poultry, which is automatically 15 minutes. And then I let it like come to pressure, cook for the 15 minutes, and then I'll just let it like lower its pressure on its own. If I do like chicken breasts, I'll take out the chicken breasts, cut them up, and then put them back in the liquid so that it soaks up all that flavor. But since I'm doing the legs, I'm not as worried. Maybe I'll flip them or something. I don't know. Not worried about it. And then the next thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to throw this corn into my pot and just boil it. And I have 6 ears of corn that I'm gonna cook all of them just so that I can, like, I'm just gonna cook them all and then put the rest in the fridge. But I break them in half because of Dan. I myself could eat like 3 ears of corn because dang it, I love corn. It's not the healthiest of vegetables, or it's not even really a vegetable, but it's probably not the healthiest thing, but you know, I like it and I'm not giving it up.
Baby corn.
Want Mama to help?
No, yeah.
You want to do it? So I just fill the pot with water and then I add a little salt just to give the corn a little bit of flavor. And then as a side, I wanted to throw some fries in the oven. And so here I am just grabbing some fries, putting them on a tray, spraying the tray, and then putting the fries on there, and then just putting all seasoned salt. And then I do make my own sauce to go with the fries later on, and I'll show you that in a minute. But yeah, it's just, sometimes you just gotta throw some fries in the oven. And frozen fries from Walmart, you know, it works. It's all good. I left these in the oven yesterday. They look more tasty today than they did yesterday. Yum. Let me put the lid on. As I was taking a look around my kitchen, I noticed that I had these kiwis that really needed to be used. So I decided to chop them up. I just cut all of them all at once just to make it really easy and put them in this container. And yes, we probably ate about half of them for this meal, but you know, it's all good. As long as they get eaten, I'm happy with it. And so, yeah, so we ate some kiwi, and I did have to turn on like some YouTube or something. I don't know what I'm watching or listening to, but I have to do that when I'm like cutting up fruit because I get so bored. So, yep, that's what I'm doing here. Kiwi's good. So it's all the way cooked through, at least it should be. I mean, the Instant Pot does a good job at cooking chicken. So just letting it kind of sit in the sauce. I could simmer it and let it kind of cover the chicken a little bit more, but I think we'll just throw some Sweet Baby Ray's on top when we eat it and call it good. But I'll just let it kind of sit in there while I'm getting everything else ready. So I have my corn. I'm gonna take them and just stick them in here, and then I'm gonna stick some butter in this and let the butter melt on top of all of these, just so that we don't have to like roll each piece of corn in the butter. So I melted half a stick of butter and I'm just gonna dump it on top. And then I'm also gonna put some salt and pepper on top. We could use a little bit more of that. And then on the side, I'm just gonna throw together a quick fry sauce. So I'm from Utah, which is where fry sauce originated. I don't know if you've ever heard it. It's also sometimes called like hamburger sauce, but it's mayo and ketchup are the main ingredients. And then I like to add a little bit of pickle juice, depending on what mood I'm in. I like the bread and butter chips pickles, which are more sweet, and then you add a little mustard as well. So I'm just gonna mix it up in here. So I'll just make like a container this size of the fry sauce, and then we usually eat it throughout the week. We don't usually eat the whole container in one meal because that would be a freak ton of sauce to eat in one meal, but you know, to each their own. Whatever, if that's what you like. I can't eat that much sauce in one meal, but that's just how I am. So So I just kind of eyeball it, like kind of like half the ketchup to mayo. I don't know. You want it to be orange, like a creamy, light pink, orangey, reddy color. I don't know. That might need a little bit more ketchup in it. Some pickle juice, a little bit of mustard. I probably should have stirred that up first. Oopsies. But like you could add like a relish if you wanted instead of like pickle juice, but I don't like the chunks, so it's kind of similar to like the In-N-Out animal sauce. So obviously this is just like a super easy meal and it's just tasty, makes you feel like you're at home. Add some kiwi and you're doing good. I'm so glad you stayed with me until the end. I'm so glad that we could hang out and try some delicious meals together, and I hope you try some of these recipes. Some of them are like staples, especially that soup. Oh my gosh, I'm dying. And oh my gosh, the beef with broccoli too. I just want it all. Put it in my mouth right now. It's like midnight and I'm starving.